Mr. Nathapanu Nopakun, Deputy Director General, Department of Information and Deputy Spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand. Mr. Nathapanu is a career diplomat with more than 20 years of experience in bilateral, multilateral, and management experience. He has handled several projects related to all regions of the world and on many substantive issues, such as rural development, human trafficking, human rights, disarmament, refugees, migration, corruption, global health, and regional security, among others. From year 2008 to 2011, he was an official interpreter and speechwriter for the three Prime Minister of Thailand as liaison for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the Government House. Mr. Nathapanu was posted in Phnom Penh and Washington, D.C., then as Minister Counselor at the Thai mission to the UN in Geneva from 2012 to 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Nathapanu Nopakun. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope everyone can hear me well.
Yes. Just before I pass the floor to you, I would like to invite us all for our traditional group photo session. Okay? So please turn on your camera, everyone, and smile to your camera on a count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Again. Ready? Ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Now the floor is yours. Mr. Nathapanu, now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I hope the volume is quite okay. So first, thank you to the Devavongse Institute for organizing this. I'm sure that I have listeners right now from around the world. I looked at the list of participants. Many are diplomats from Thailand and from every region across the globe. So I guess I cannot say good afternoon. I might have to say good morning or good evening to some of you as well. I'm familiar with some of you here, some of your faces here. I think I've met some of you already for those who are posted in Thailand. Now, for diplomacy and sustainability and public diplomacy in the new normal, it's a very interesting issue. As Kun Tukta introduced, I'm the Deputy Director General for Information, so I'm also the Deputy Spokesperson of the Foreign Ministry. So therefore, I handle public diplomacy as the core of the work that I do here. Now, I'd like to start off with just some ideas first about public diplomacy, and then I'll move on to issues which are related to public diplomacy, which is digital diplomacy, as well as cultural diplomacy. And perhaps at the end, I'll talk a little bit about public diplomacy in times of crisis or in the COVID period that we're all still facing right now across the globe. So firstly, I'd just like to say that nowadays, individuals and organizations easily develop networks and interactions through digital technology, potentially reaching a large global audience. Now, the most important thing in public diplomacy is to focus on the relationship, more on the relationship building with the general public, between diplomats and the public, between diplomats and the business sector, between the country as one entity with the public of another country. These are all public diplomacy issues, but the most important thing is about the relationships, more than merely the messages. So therefore, the social network, the social media expansions, the approaches, all allows us to see each other's ideas and positions in the same environment, and also to identify and mobilize influencers, which are both online and offline, to achieve an impact, a sustained impact. So that's actually how we should approach social media in terms of public diplomacy. So relationship building has always been a cornerstone of public diplomacy. The difference is that when relationships are viewed as isolated entities, we emphasize one pair of actors, and for example, a bilateral relationship, one at a time. But in contrast, on the opposite side of it, if we look at things on a network perspective, as a whole network, as a whole web of many relationships, it represents a wider outlook, a wider approach, and it considers multiple relationships in one set, and everything happens simultaneously. And of course, by attending how relationships influence and change each other's relationships. So it's all, all mixed up. It's about multitasking relationships. So therefore, public diplomacy is quite complex if you look at it in the network perspective. It becomes ever more important to look at this in a complex way, this ecosystem in a complex way. It's a global web. Look at it in terms of a global web of communication networks in international exchange. When we diplomats have international exchange, in the past, before COVID, it was usually either defined as bilateral or multilateral. But then in COVID times, the network perspective has become something much more relevant, a more global web using digital diplomacy. And digital diplomacy is a very important part of public diplomacy. Now, of course, there are the formal and the informal networks established, and maintaining and sustaining such networks all require an understanding of the nature of the networks. It's both a strategic sense, it's also an empirical sense, also about mapping who's who, also about reevaluating the relationships we have using the social networks as the first step. So there's the digital world and the physical world, and the challenge is, of course, how to integrate both the digital world and the physical world when we practice public diplomacy. So therefore, in the normal times, we might be able to use our voices as diplomats to influence, win hearts and minds, build an understanding of whatever we want to project to other countries, to the public of other countries. But of course, in the digital world, it's a more complex challenge in building a unique voice, a unique digital voice and digital personality in whatever media product or whatever message you project in whatever public diplomacy program you have. But at the same time, when we go all digital, it's also important to maintain the human touch, right? Because as I'm a diplomat, just to put it bluntly, if everything digital can take my place, then I'll be out of my job, right? If like in the cartoon, if robots take anyone's place, there would be no more waiters, because robots become waiters, right? So if we use digital diplomacy for public diplomacy, if we use digital tools for public diplomacy, and we lose the human touch, then diplomats will run out of jobs. So we will all be jobless. So therefore, it's very important to maintain the human touch when we talk about digitalization of public diplomacy, maintaining person-to-person contact, even though we're using the digital tools. And of course, as I said, COVID made it more apparent to us that despite the easiness, the smoother method of communicating through the different tools, despite that, it's also very fundamental to maintain whatever we had in the physical environment. So I think that's very important, because it's a very technologically adept world, technologically infused world. So there's always that craving to get the real message, get the real feeling, get the sincere message from a sincere diplomat, for example, right? So it's different when diplomats, we look at each other in the eye, or when our bosses negotiate and deliver anything, in our work. It's quite different from just someone reading an infographic or seeing a video clip or seeing something on Instagram or Facebook. It's very, very much different. So So that's something that has to be leveled out and maintained. So that was actually just some thoughts that I found to put this in perspective first. But all in all, I would say that public diplomacy provides the linkage between our own national positions, our own national interest, each country's national interest, vis-a-vis versus the international understanding, international common good. So there's a balance between that, and public diplomacy is sort of like blurs the idea, blurs the divide, you know, between what is my own national foreign policy, which may sound selfish to other people, with the thing that I or Thailand wants to bring good to the world. It's a totally different thing, right? So, for example, when I started working out as a diplomat around 25 years ago, so I look young. I'm older than I look. So, so when I started around 25 plus years ago as a diplomat, people told me that, you know, diplomats are those paid to lie for their country. Of course, that's a classic, right? Or something like, there is no morality in foreign policy, meaning it's so bad. I mean, foreign policy, foreign diplomats, we were so bad. I mean, that's the meaning of that sentence. It's that what it means is that every diplomat fights for, advances their own nationals, their own country's foreign policy, and that is the main interest without any regard to other people's interests. So that's the classic idea. But public diplomacy wants to blur this idea and link it with what we want the world to be. So, for example, my country's national interest is XXX. I'll do everything I can to do it, to negotiate. I don't care what my neighboring country thinks because I represent Thailand. That's one example. At the same time, Thailand wants to promote the concept of, for example, SEP, if you're familiar, sufficiency, economy, philosophy. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about that later. We want to promote that for the world, for developing countries to follow suit. It's like a very important principle. We want to export to the world. You know, living life in moderation. It's about sustainable agriculture as well, if it's applied to agriculture, things like that. So there's two different extremes, right? So the public diplomacy is a thing that's in between that tries to link this, okay? And how do we do this? Of course, through cultural diplomacy, through soft power, through exchanges, developing international understanding, more cooperative behavior. So it's a reflection of one country's self-interest, but to work for the world's interest, if I'll put it, well, if I can't find any better term. But I guess you know what I mean. Okay. So there is actually one. There are many things that during this COVID period that we must sort of like reshape or reimagine as diplomats, because it's very difficult to perform actually to implement public diplomacy in times like these. That's what I say, because everybody is so much concentrated in their own country's survival, right? Their own country's survival. So in terms of COVID, right? So there comes a term of vaccine diplomacy, COVID diplomacy, and all these things. So I think public diplomacy at the end ultimately would mean that it's something that works for people to live better together. Okay, but it's a role that diplomats can help. Public diplomacy in all shapes and forms, in every level, it provides a connection. It provides the connective of the human mind and human feeling, the rapport with what your country stands for. And it's very important, it's vital for expanding the space of the common space, the collective space of what the world, where the world wants to go through, the common empathy that we want to go to. And in this case, of course, empathy for everyone during the pandemic. So that was just the opening. Oh, I see. Just to say hello to some of my colleagues. I've met some of colleagues who have been posted here. My colleague from Russia and Brazil, and I can't turn the page yet, but when I do, I'll see all of you. And I'm sure that there are many from the other embassies here, and of course around the world as well. Okay. So I'll try to start sharing some screens. I have two presentations, and I'll continue talking. And then before we end, we can have some Q&A. Okay. Share. Okay, just a moment. Okay. Do you see my screen? If someone sees my screen, can you hold up your finger? Okay, okay, yes, okay, thank you. I saw one person with a hand, okay. Okay, so just to test, okay, I'm sharing my screen and this is the list of participants. Okay, very good, very good. I hope all of you in the list are here. And I'll call you one by one to ask me questions. No, I'm just joking about that. Okay, so the first screen. Okay, so I'll talk about public diplomacy in the new normal. If there's any issue about not hearing me, the admin, our team can inform me. Right now it's still fine, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So public diplomacy in the new normal. First of all, what is public diplomacy? There are many definitions of public diplomacy. It deals with the influence of public attitudes on the formation and execution of foreign policies. It's about the cultivation by governments of public opinion in other countries, about the interaction of private groups and interests in one country with another, about the impact of foreign affairs, your foreign affairs on other countries, about communication, about connections, about correspondence, about diplomat and foreign correspondence, and about intercultural communication. And if you recall, the first thing I said in my opening was that it's about connections of the human mind and feeling. It's very important to expand this space. It's the blur line, it's the buffer zone between national interest and what we want the world and the international interest, what we want the world to be. And more about engaging and influencing public attitude to advance foreign policy goals, about soft power, or the ability to achieve objectives through attraction, not coercion, to make other people feel the way we feel, think the way we think. In my sense, it would be to love Thainess, about being Thai, everything Thai, food, culture, and the rest, what we stand for. Objective is to win hearts and minds of the public. Public diplomacy and soft power are closely related. Now, traditional diplomacy is actually something that our forefathers began with. It is actually no longer sufficient in many sense because the world has changed. Because in the past, public opinion and views did not matter as much today. But today, public views are made known to us very, very quickly, almost instantly through social media. And there is also what we call the citizen diplomat. Citizen diplomat, just like how we have the citizen journalists. So citizen diplomats, everyone wants to be a diplomat. Everyone wants to represent their country and reach out to the world and do everything that we do. Citizen journalists as well. Everybody can be a journalist from home, right? So non-state actors and civil society, private sectors have become more interested in foreign policy, in playing a role in the international arena. We're having their own network of relationships, not only for business, but to speak for the country and represent whatever sector they represent in place of the traditional diplomat. And of course, there is the rapid dissemination of information. You can see that as a challenge, or you can see that as a blessing as well. And of course, the availability of so many new social media platforms. So we have, as I mentioned here, versus traditional versus public diplomacy, how things have changed now, new players, new partnerships, engagement. the content that is not anymore hidden or concealed from the public. And the most important thing, of course, is for communication and engagement, which has to be timely and accurate. It has to be a strategic set of communication for public diplomacy diplomats, experts to use to know your target group, build the right content, right delivery channel at the right time, and developing lasting relationships. Okay, so for Thailand, just as an example, in the Foreign Ministry of Thailand, we have used a lot of time in working on public diplomacy and digital diplomacy, using various technologies in communicating with the public, the foreign public as well as the Thai public as well in many dimensions. And it includes about our policy, it includes about our activities, what we support, what we engage in, the right understanding on some issues in Thailand, and to, of course, the challenge is to reach the widest audience in the quickest amount of time. Some of the things we do on a regular basis in terms of public diplomacy is, of course, the weekly press briefing by the spokesperson, as well as other tools which we use. We have an in-house radio program, which is on AM. AM is not FM, but the good point is that it reaches a lot of areas in the provinces of Thailand, on the border of Thailand with our neighboring countries. So our colleagues in many provinces in Cambodia, Laos PDR, and Myanmar can listen to this radio program, Sarandom Radio. We also have a lot of media products which we have worked on, including podcasts, which we had developed, as well as the normal print media and outreach projects. Okay, so we have been working also with many countries in terms of exchanges, learning a lot about their public diplomacy use, the tools they use. So for example, my department has been in informal exchange on video conference on Zoom with around 4 or 5 countries already, with 4 or 5 departments of information, 4 or 5 spokespersons of the foreign ministry already, in Indonesia, Germany, Israel, Malaysia, and then we're looking for, and also we've been in contact with, of course, Kosovo as well. I think there's a participant, some participants from Kosovo as well, because their former ambassador here was very active in terms of digital diplomacy. And we're looking forward to doing this with other countries as well to learn what they are doing, so we can help each other become better digital diplomats. Now, in terms of the soft power and cultural diplomacy, it's a part of public diplomacy. In the Thai perspective, in the context of Thailand, we give importance to this in terms of promoting what Thailand is, in promoting the culture, the film, the food, the fashion, the arts, and the sports in that to the world. The current popularity of things that are Thai, just as an example, is, I think, at a moderate level, but we hope to expand it further. In the past years, for example, many news agencies have ranked Thailand quite top in terms of soft power diplomacy. So sorry, soft power as a soft power, around number 18, 18, compared to other countries around the world. But still lower than some of our ASEAN friends, lower than Singapore. And of course, like in Asia, you would have countries like Korea with a very strong soft power base. In some news outlets, they have also ranked Thailand Thai food as well as the top in the past years. So we've been pushing forward the policy of cultural diplomacy for some time. Also trying to engage and have people be interested in what is Thai, and in the same time building up friendships and networks as well. And we hope to do this in a more systematic way. Cultural diplomacy is of course very influential. It has its impact on diplomacy, on the politics and economics in a subtle or in an indirect sense. And we have on the screen, you can see here some images. I'll just show you some of the activities such as the festivals, Thai festivals around the world. The tools we use, of course, soft power for promoting tourism, culture, and of course it is kind of different from what the other agencies do in terms of promoting tourism just for marketing or promoting culture. You know, ours, we have an objective in terms of all of this being a puzzle, a part of public diplomacy. Okay, you see the word Muay Thai, Thai boxing there. It's been recognized as an Olympic sport already, but of course it depends on each Olympic host to have it or not. So we're looking for the next Olympics for Thai boxing there. Of course, tourism, food, street food as well. The creative industry, films, soap operas, which are gaining popularity in Asia, and we've been doing a lot of film festivals mostly around Asia for now. Thai boxing, as I mentioned. We had many outreach road shows before COVID, including a route for a road show to Africa, South Africa and Mozambique as well. I'm not sure if we have some images later on that, but we found that many people in, I think it was Mozambique, many young girls in Mozambique took it quite well because they wanted to use Muay Thai not as a sport but as a means of self-defense as well, for protection as well. Here I was mentioning about Muay Thai going towards the Olympic Games. Now, I mentioned about SEPs, Sufficiency Economy Philosophy. It's Thailand's approach to fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. So we use this as a soft power tool in our public diplomacy. So sufficiency economy philosophy is actually a philosophy that was laid down by His Majesty King Rama IX, the late King of Thailand, in terms of a philosophy of moderation, of sustainability, applying sustainability to way of life, to village life, to agriculture, to many things, to home economics, you know, and then things like that. So our aid agency, we have to not underestimate the power of development cooperation in public diplomacy. You know, agencies like, you know, JICA, the Japanese aid agency, or AusAid, right, or USAID, the US one. In Thailand, we have TICA, the Thailand International Cooperation Agency, and TICA has promoted SEPs around the world, creating, you see on screen, many learning centers and model villages in many countries around the world to promote the concept of SEPs, mostly in Asia and the African continent. Just some examples in Lesotho and in Lao PDR, just some sustainable agricultural development villages, or SEP study center and vocational school, fulfilling many of the SDGs. So this is just some examples of what we push to the world in terms of our public diplomacy work. Some more in Cambodia and in Chile, self-applied from the alumni of TICA training programs, self-reliance, SEP model village, and the like. And future partners in 9 countries. So just now I mentioned about digital diplomacy. Just some definitions here. So we had the tools we use, the cultural diplomacy, soft power, and digital diplomacy. Anyone seeking to connect with people and build influence using digital tools needs to be authentic, engaging, and purposeful. All three. Now, this was a quote from former UK Ambassador Tom Fletcher in his book called The Naked Diplomat. For our foreign ministry, my own foreign ministry, we use social media tools. We're trying to use it to the maximum. I'm sure many foreign ministries around the world have more followers in these platforms than us. But for a country like Thailand, we're one of the highest users of Facebook around the world. So for a country like Thailand, I think the Thai foreign ministry can have more followers on Facebook, just to put it simply. So we're trying to work on that. Of course, Twitter is used more in outside Asia, but increasingly increasingly in Asia, but it's usually more outside Asia. So that's where our followers there. Of course, Line account is used in Asia, the Korean Japanese company. Instagram for the more human touch, kind of human face of the work of diplomats. Our pictures are there. We're trying to develop our YouTube channel into a foreign ministry channel in the future. And of course, we have the light moments on TikTok. The B one is Blocked It. It's a local Thai platform like Facebook. So we put stories of experiences of Thai diplomats around the world there. And we have a website called Thailand Now, which is actually a track 2 website, meaning we have a formal website, right, of the foreign ministry. So Thailand Now is the sort of like the informal website, wherein we have Thai people write about Thailand in many aspects from the Thai narrative. Because of course, we figured that many articles about Thailand in English are written by non-Thai people, people not from Thailand, right? So it's more important to have the narrative written by your own people, right? So we have Thai people writing in English articles about every aspect of Thailand on this page. And it just began late last year. So just some examples just now, or Facebook. I'll just go through this quickly. It's the different platforms we have. 300,000 followers. Instagram, mentioned just now. Line official account. Twitter. YouTube. The radio I mentioned. TikTok. That's our football match with the Foreign Correspondents Club, the foreign journalists in Thailand. Blocked It, as I mentioned. The formal, official foreign ministry website. And of course, during the COVID campaign, we had many media products and infographics in other languages other than Thai. You had that in Burmese and Chinese on screen, and English. And of course, next year we'll be host of APEC 2022. So we're starting building awareness on that through our digital tools. The Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation economies. Of course, cultural campaigns, environment, plastics, and promotional media products. Last year, it focused on helping Thai people return to Thailand because of the COVID pandemic. And the Thai festivals I mentioned in the beginning have now mostly turned to become online festivals around the world. And this is the Thailand Now portal that I mentioned. The Thai narrative on everything, on economy, on society, on politics. And the radio program, we also have an English language program on it as well every week. And the Thai version. Of course, print, projecting what we want to tell the public. This article in Thai is about the cooperation between Thailand and Senegal on producing, what do you call it? Legs for the handicapped. This was what I mentioned, the Muay Thai Roadshow in Kenya, in Africa. And we've also engaged, of course, in terms of public diplomacy for consular services, becoming more digital for consular application for people traveling to Thailand and Thai nationals. and the economic diplomacy side of things, side of things, Glob Thailand website. Yes, from awareness to engagement. Okay, so this is the first screen. This is the second one now. Can you see the green here? I'm sure you can. Yes, the green picture. So just to recap, this was a very interesting conference in July held by the Singapore International Foundation, or SIF. It was called Public Diplomacy in Asia 2021. Okay, and there's actually a publication called Winning Hearts and Minds that they published. So it recaps many things, and this is a very easy to understand what do you call it, pictogram or visual recording. I won't go through all of it because there are around 11 of it, but I'll just go through the gist of it. But that each session recapped about public diplomacy in ASEAN, in the ASEAN region, and in Asia. For example, what public diplomacy meant in Thailand in the beginning, starting to fight against an information war in the past against communism, and it turned out to be about engaging young people into the ASEAN concept, for example. Okay, in Singapore, of course, it was also about the historical and cultural ties with other countries. It's also about reminding about both the foreign and local public that Singapore is unique, in that sense. In Cambodia also, that Cambodia is an independent actor. In Malaysia as well, the 3 or 4 Ps, People, Prosperity, Planet Partnership, and that was their focus. This is the first slide. I'll just go through these for you, okay? The second one is about public diplomacy in post-COVID world. Just our topic that we were talking about just now. That it's very important that to use digital diplomacy to create content during this time. It's the mode that has to be the most creative now and make people understand and feel that their government, for example, is doing everything they can to help them against COVID. So the COVID period has begun to has opened the door for a more hybrid type of diplomacy, because everything now is, of course, online, and empowering citizens to give their feedback as well, raising questions on who will help the world recover in 2 to 3 years. It's also important, you see on the right-hand side, important to communicate for public diplomacy practitioners to communicate to everyone, not only people that speak your national language, not just people who speak English, but also people who speak other languages who are part of your society. And I'll just go to a bit later into that because we've done that in Thailand as well. The third session was about bridging the world between business and diplomacy. Very important. Many businesses have now played a very important role in global development, in the SDGs, in sustainability, and everything. The national innovation, for example, as one example. The important thing is that just like in business, in diplomacy, trust is very important. When you have trust in a business, you buy from them. When you have trust in diplomacy and diplomats, when people trust what you say and do in terms of everything you project on social media or in press briefings, it's important, but it has to be built over time. On the right-hand side, you see some words there. Only through exchanging cultures and knowledge can domestic businesses thrive internationally. That's the advice for businesses, okay? But for diplomats, of course, it applies as well in terms of our public diplomacy messaging. Okay, the link between business and diplomacy, it's always there. The slide 4 is about different approaches in evaluating effectiveness of public diplomacy. Foreign policy connections have been depoliticized, and it's heartening to see that the conversation is starting again. Public diplomacy is the huge umbrella concept with no singular expected outcome. Measuring the efficiency of public diplomacy means measuring expected outcomes, not the unexpected ones. So it's quite complex, quite difficult to work well in public diplomacy given all of these things, all of these contexts of the world. 5 was about untangling cultural diplomacy that I mentioned just now. We can collaborate in a cultural space, develop foundations for collective solutions. It's very important to build understanding, perception, heart and mind of the public, creative and intellectual exchange. But culture has been a sideshow in the international relations in the past. So there are many aspects which we can actually use cultural diversity as a tool, for promoting the better, closer diplomatic relations, dialogue and exchange and understanding. City diplomacy is another aspect of public diplomacy. Many cities have a lot of international relations, sister cities. They face the same urban or non-urban challenges. So leadership in city public diplomacy is very important, be it in terms of climate change and other issues. Number 7 was about empowering young people. That's something that Thailand, the Thai Foreign Ministry is about very much focusing on in Southeast Asia. 60% spend their waking lives online. I think in Thailand it's around 80 or 90%. Young people spend their lives online. So it's very important to be able to communicate with them. Governments should work a lot on youth exchange because they are actually the real diplomats, I would say, the young diplomats, the diplomats of the future. The number 8 is about the global health diplomacy, very important. Global health diplomacy is something we see every day today, be it vaccine diplomacy. The success or the failure of vaccine diplomacy, health diplomacy, securing vaccines, exchanges, the know-how, not only vaccines, but of course, when COVID began in the beginning, it was very, very, how shall I say, it wasn't global yet. It was thought to be affecting only Asia, in China, for example, and then it came to Thailand. And at the beginning, people thought that would end in a few months, but of course, it became a very global phenomenon. And there are issues still with vaccines. So global health diplomacy is something that public diplomacy can help to address if we can do it perfectly, which of course, that's in a perfect world. So the challenge remains. The 9th one is about the strategic value of development cooperation that I mentioned. The JICA, TICA, AusAid, USAID, it's very important to build a lot of trust and understanding through public diplomacy. On the right-hand side, you have some examples of disasters. For example, Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, and the international response was the most comprehensive display of diplomacy and development I had seen. Now, this is quoting from one of the panelists. Okay, so people-to-people exchange is very important and will pave the way for state-to-state diplomacy, people-to-people understanding as well. Number 10 is about the narrative creation in public diplomacy, power of storytelling. So I talked about narrative just now in my example, Thailand Now, the website, right? The narrative is very important. And of course, you all know this on the narrative that you want to project, but it's always crisscrossing with other people's narratives, or it's attacked by fake news, and now there's deep fake news, there's misinformation, and there's disinformation, and it's all different. And in many countries like Thailand, we're struggling to address this in our government structure with many tools and systems between government agencies to be able to have the information in the same time and reply to it in the quickest way possible. And the last one is about digital diplomacy. You can take a few seconds to look at that over there, and I will stop sharing the screen now. Okay, now I hope you see my face back here, right? Yes, okay, I saw my colleague from Brazil nod, the head of the economic department of the Brazilian embassy. Okay, I'm moving to full screen, but I can't do it, so it's fine. So lastly, I'll just talk about just 3 minutes, the last 3 minutes, I'll talk about COVID. Okay, so we talked about public diplomacy, doing new normal, digital diplomacy, very important for this day and age to engage it most effectively, cultural diplomacy in COVID times as well. We actually had a seminar called New Culture, New Culture, meaning Thai culture, soft power stuff. How can we project that in the times of the pandemic? So it has to be more of online. It has to remain cool. So culture, right? Culture, culture. So it has to remain cool, but remaining cool, but not being able to do anything face to face. It's quite a challenge. So we had many online events and seminars to promote how to push forward Thai soft power in this to make it remain cool, make culture remain cool in this day and age. So of course, COVID. Everything we talked about here, it has COVID in the picture because it's the main agenda for every single person in the world in every profession day. Just as a footnote that in Thailand, we struggled the most when the second and third wave came in after the New Year's. The 2020 was a better year for us when we handled it best, and we weren't quite high in the global ranking, although we were the first to see the case from after China. But after the New Year, and after the holiday season, and after the arrival of the new variants, Delta variant in particular, the numbers started to get higher. We are still struggling with many things because it sort of like spilled over to institutions in terms of the exposing the faults of many institutions of collaboration, of integration of many government agencies. It exposed also that many policies of governments, if the government is not held together, for example, in unity, then there could be so many views and policies from different ministries. One ministry might be controlled by one political party, for example, the minister coming from one party, and another ministry might be controlled by another minister from another party because it's a coalition government, for example. But it exposed things like this. It's also exposed that no matter how strong the foundation we had in terms of the public health system, in Thailand we have a very strong public health system, but in terms of the universal health coverage, UHC, in terms of the village health volunteers, in terms of the general personality of Thai people of being hygiene, in terms of the warm weather. I don't know if that helps, right? But in all of these things, despite all of these supposed strong points, COVID struck us in the third wave, and our numbers reached quite high, the maximum of around 20,000 per day, over 20,000 per day. In the past week and 2 weeks, fortunately, the number has become more stable, declining to around 18 or 17,000 per day. So it's more of a more stable situation right now. The death rate has risen from around like 5 or 50 per day to around 200 or 300 per day. I think this is quite alarming for when we compare ourselves to ourselves last year. But compared to other countries, it's not that high. Compared to some other countries, it's high. So it's kind of relative to where you stand. But the most important thing is that it's getting the numbers are getting quite stable now in Thailand. And we are actually not staying still. We're moving forward in provinces where we have a low rate of infection, especially provinces that are very popular tourist destinations. We created bubbles as city bubbles or province bubbles for tourists to be able to travel there. So as many of you might know, in the tourist destination of Phuket, the island of Phuket, we have that bubble, the Phuket sandbox scheme, wherein tourists who are vaccinated can come in and they have to stay in Phuket for 7 days and not leave. So it's sort of like a pseudo quarantine, a fake quarantine, a quarantine not in a hotel but in an island, which is better than in a hotel, of course. But of course, for all other past arrivals to Thailand, they have to be quarantined in a facility. And then we've expanded that to 7 plus 7. So Phuket 7 days plus another 7 days in a nearby island in a sealed route. So you can't go anywhere except Phuket and that other island, like Samui Island, if you're familiar. So 7 plus 7, a good quarantine on the beach. I think it's better than a hotel quarantine. So we experimented with that. There had been some infections, but not very high. So that scheme continues. So we're hoping to move forward. In terms of the vaccines, of course, we have not vaccinated as much as other countries, but of course everything is relative. It's comparative, of course. But up to around 26 million doses already in Thailand for a population of 69 million. So hoping that will increase soon. So vaccine diplomacy is something that actually it's a term that we wanted to use in our public diplomacy messages, in our content, but we decided not to, because when we use the term vaccine diplomacy, it turns out to be something that's not very successful. I mean, in general for many countries around the world. So the fight goes on. Okay, so I think that's all I have. I have to stop for some questions. I think we have 10 minutes according to what the Institute told me for Q&A. So please, thank you. Anybody, please?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, but I can't see you.
Okay.
Oh yes, I see you now.
on
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, Khapun Khap, Mr. Nopakun. That was an excellent presentation. I I guess this training itself is a form of public diplomacy in the new normal, as we're doing it online like this. I just wanted to note that I was very impressed by the breadth of public diplomacy activities that MOFA Thailand has. It was very, very impressive. I just had a situation which I'd like you to give your expert comment on. I'll just describe the situation very briefly, and I'd love to know what you or any of our colleagues here think about. A foreign ambassador in Nepal wanted to use the Facebook Live feature to do like a weekly interaction with the public in Nepal. And it was supposed to be a weekly series going on for a fixed period of time. But the officials were not very happy with that kind of move. And there was also some comments about how that is not in line with international diplomatic practices and such. And the foreign ambassador and his office in reply said that this is part of public diplomacy in today's world, and there shouldn't be an issue with us doing something like this. So I just wanted your comment on what you think about this situation. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Satish, right, from Nepal.
Yes, sir.
So I think that public diplomacy remains something of a learning process for many foreign ministries around the world, and the way that it is used, the exact tools, the exact format that is used depends on many countries. Just as one example, one country is very, very efficient in using it, but the main objective is to build a bad image for another country that is its adversary. Okay, that's one objective. But my presentation was about a whole different thing, right? My presentation was about what Thailand wanted to project to the world and things like that. So it depends on how people want to use it. I think that when you look at it on a different perspective, I think that there has to be some sort of middle ground. So I think some foreign ministries might be starting to learn about public diplomacy. Some might still be fixed to the traditional way of working, okay, which is not wrong, okay, which is not wrong, but to maintain the sort of like the clout or the comfort zone, the space in which foreign ministries can work most effectively. So that's what they hold here. I think it just depends on leveraging what public diplomacy is. So I guess the embassies and the foreign ministries should have a dialogue, on the activities of public diplomacy, which the embassy sees as very effective, useful for the public in that country or not, and what the foreign ministry thinks. So I think it's a two-way dialogue. That's in the format. But in the content wise, if people disagree with content on digital media, digital products, then that's another issue. it's the same issue as talking face to face and disagreeing on something, right? So I'm disagree with Satish on something face to face. It happens in the same way, but in terms of on digital media. So if the embassy wanted to do a Facebook Live on an issue that has a content that the foreign ministry saw as not appropriate, then they actually have to talk about the content of what to do. And the format, it's a different issue. But I think dialogue on talking about what is suits best for the people of both countries is very important, because public diplomacy is for the people of both countries. Yes. So any
Thank
more
you.
questions?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Namaste. Yes, next.
Yeah.
If I may.
Dapano, thank you so much. Thank you for mentioning me also. My question goes along the same lines. How does this Thailand deal with posts from HQ and the posts? For example, in the case of Brazil, there are some thin guidelines, but the embassies are pretty much responsible for maintaining and feeding their Twitter, TikTok, Facebook accounts. Does Thailand has any kind of centralized guidelines for the posts to do that? How do you manage this kind of posts? Also, the sandbox is a great initiative. Too bad it can't be used by people coming from Brazil. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, William. So if the connection was a bit cut, but if I understand correctly, you're asking about the posts, the content posts posted by foreign embassies in Thailand in social media, right?
No. Sorry, it's about posts made by Thai embassies abroad, vis-a-vis the posts made by the Thai MFA in Bangkok.
Okay, I see. Okay. Yes. We are trying to centralize this because actually each Thai embassy has to should be posting things which are of policy from our headquarters, of course. So we send them actually content as well to post. But at the same time, we recognize that each Thai embassy has a different audience, right? So the Facebook account of the Thai embassy in one country in Europe or in Africa would have to post different things. So our guideline is that we send them guidelines from time to time, okay, to post things which are relevant to the audience, not be not be posting something which are so remote and so foreign in the social media, because it's also an account that is seen by the local population. So be local, be domestic as well. So the embassy in Argentina might have to post things on Twitter about things that the Argentinian public is interested in, or the Brazilian public is interested in. Not just post anything that we post from the headquarters, which is very much for the Thai audience or for the audience or for the foreign audience in Thailand only. So it has to be that kind of balance or mixture. Also to post in the local language as well. So I think many embassies in Latin America post in Spanish. And so that's our general guideline. But we have that from time to time. And as you saw in the presentation, many had begun their Twitter accounts already, aside from Facebook, because most embassies usually use Facebook and website, but not many had Twitter, so we had them do that.
If I might ask the next question. Right.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. My name is Michael. I'm from Indonesia. So it's very interesting how you mentioned how you place public diplomacy in the grander scheme of projection of soft power. My question is, what, in your opinion, do you think the strongest asset in Thailand's public diplomacy? And in regards to managing that asset, how much do you think should the regulation be? Like, should it be left natural as is, or should there be a rather extensive regulation governing on how you're going to portray that specific asset of yours? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question, Michael, right? So I think one of the strong points of Thai public diplomacy just to be frank, is that we can work with not many worries because we don't have many issues which are very issues of conflict, right? As a country, but we have many issues that we have to promote further. So each country, of course, has their own different relationships with other countries. I think in general, for Thailand, we're kind of well liked. I mean, not to be so much conceited, but we're kind of well liked in general among the many countries around the world. Now that can be a bad thing as well. It might not be a good thing because it might be, people might say that we're not very bold. We don't have very bold statements on many issues. We sort of tend to stay neutral or stay in the middle. Tend to keep the balance. So it can be a good thing or a bad thing, right? So I think that's one point. In terms of the public diplomacy, I think we have we still have many challenges. Like we need better, more effective communicators. To be frank, not everyone in the Thai government service or the Thai Foreign Ministry are keen with public diplomacy or even digital social media yet. So we still have to work on that. But all in all, I think the strong point is that we're able to afford a constructive outlook because we're not yet in any conflicting situation with anyone around the globe. Also, that our reach in terms of social media is also kind of wide. The Thai audience is very big. One of the largest users of Facebook, and we have also Thai citizens around the world who also help us actually in terms of public diplomacy as well. The Thai community around the world, that's around 1.6 million, maybe lesser than Indonesians around the world, of course. But for Thai diaspora around the world, they also help in that. And then I think our diplomats are kind of bilingual, so that's very good. And in the coming years, I think there'll be more Thai diplomats who are more keen on digital diplomacy, and a more younger population of Thai diplomats who will be able to work on public diplomacy more effectively. So I think that's some of the strong points.
Excuse me, may I? Hello, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Mia Mo from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Myanmar. I'm an assistant director from Protocol Department. My question is, it's more like seeking an advice from a junior diplomat to a senior diplomat. As you know, the situation in Myanmar, both the pandemic situation and also a lot of things in the changes in politics as well. So according to the public diplomacy in new normal, what would be your suggestions that as a diplomat, what we should do to reach to the people more? Like, you know, for the outreach projects in normal way, we have a lot of things working on from government side, but now according to this situation, I would like to seek your advice on our situation as a senior diplomat. Just a few comments on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there can be a relationship between the work of public diplomacy of foreign ministries with everything that's happening in every country, or there can also not be a connection at all as well. So actually, I think you can distinguish, separate between the two, because, well, first of all, I'll say that for me, some people might not agree, but for me, as a diplomat, I feel that I represent the whole spectrum of Thai society. Okay, that's just my feeling. Okay, for me myself, I feel that I don't represent only the government, only the foreign ministry, only the businessmen, only the different sectors. I feel that I represent the whole spectrum of Thai society. Okay, that's my feeling. But at the same time, what has to develop, what has to change, whatever has to evolve in the country, I feel that it can be a separate matter from what I'm doing. So, for example, if there is for example, there might be elections in Thailand next year. So, for example, if the government changes, I still do the same kind of public diplomacy, right? So therefore, it does not actually depend on what's happening in the country. I think diplomats can still effectively work on public diplomacy, just that the content has to be suitable to the time and context at the moment. Okay, I'm not saying that the context has to be suitable to the time and context in one particular way or in one particular uh, uh, approach or in one particular kind of content. Okay, it can be in many contents, but it has to be the most suitable. And I think diplomats have the what do you call it? Can make that judgment very well on what to project in public diplomacy products or what to project to the people. You have that judgment on what is most suitable for your audience at the moment. That's a very interesting question, and my answer is, of course, very generic. Of course, I think that's how diplomats have to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, one last question. Okay,
hear me?
because we are, yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Napa. It's very quite interesting explanation. I would like to ask you on the suggestion, but I would like to give you like a case that I've experienced. So by pandemic, it's not any problem for us to promote anything through internet or through digital. For example, like this training or the seminar or even the culinary promotion, we can do it through internet connection. But now what sometimes we are cannot answer the question because they would like to have an assured answer from the public in the country that we work. So they always ask, when can I come to your country to enjoy in the beautiful beach, the beautiful and such thing for tourism, leisure. So this is the kind that bubble tourism is also an answer, but this is also still having a race. So in these circumstances, how can you suggest for us after all this public diplomacy promotion that we've done, but then finally the impact is, because we need a real or a concrete result, like then tourists or maybe a trader will come to the country for maintaining such good relationships. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, the real physical experience is very important, of course, very important. The challenge is that now no one can do that fully yet, of course. So, for example, people in my experience, some people around the world miss Thai food. They want to eat Thai food. So what the Thai embassy in London did was they had a cooking demonstration live on Facebook. Because it's not just a clip or infographic, it's a kind of live, and they actually cook the thing live, cook the dish live for people to enjoy, right? So I guess that's what we can do for now. But you were mentioning about the concrete result, yes, about tourism, for example. I think that our Phuket sandbox, for example, is one example that we try to open up a small part of the country that's able to handle it in a bubble kind of environment, so that the balance can be made, so that tourists who want to come, they can go there, but not come to Bangkok, for example. But right now, what can we do? We can promote tourism, for example, in our public diplomacy messages. We can build the longing, the desire for people to really want to come to Thailand, for example, or to your country, to Indonesia, for example, after the COVID situation subsides. I think it cannot be fulfilled now for some countries. For some countries it can, but at least the building up. I think public diplomacy can help build up the desire or the preparation to come, And when it's possible to come, so many will come in to have the real number of tourists. The Tourism Authority of Thailand, for example, made some media products saying that we miss you, think about us, we think about you, and when the time comes, we'll be happy to see you. So it's sort of like delaying it a bit. But that's, I think, the most we can do, because countries have to balance between health, safety, and of course, business and tourism not dying down. So one example was the bubble in Phuket that we tried to do. But of course, it's just a pilot project, and I'm not sure if it's going to be that long term, and many countries can or cannot do it. So what we can do now is just to build up the hype, or build up the affinity for people to want to engage with your country when the time comes. They can travel, and at the same time now you can do activities on digital that help to engage with people as well. Like have like them, for example, we had something like a video clip contest for people to send video clips from around the world from around Thailand to say that what you want the world to see about Thailand. So you have Thai people sending those clips in, saying that we want the world to see this about Thailand, but look at the clip for now, because you cannot come and travel to Thailand for now. Or other engagement activities on Facebook, for example, like what city do you want to travel to first in Thailand when the doors open, and people from around the world can play that game and engage with that. So some sort of light engagement or a photography contest that we did online as well. So I guess we have to continue to build up that interest in this time that we're all in COVID.
Okay. Well, public diplomacy is very timely and relevant topic, especially in this globalization world, right? This session has gained a lot of attention from our fellow participants, but it's very sad we have to say goodbye to Kun Nathapanu now. So before we doing that, I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Kantuka Chandrabal, our fellow participant from Mongolia, for appreciation speech to our speaker.
I would like to thank you, the director, for a very informative discussion on public diplomacy. I think we all share the idea that in this multi-connected world, public diplomacy becoming a more effective tool for advancing the foreign policy. And I would like to also thank the Institute for organizing very fruitful training course. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we hope to have you with us again, คุณณัฐพานุ Goodbye ขอบคุณค่ะ Okay, now we are moving to our last session for today, which is participants sharing session. And today we will have 5 participants from Ghana, Indonesia, Japan, Kosovo, and Laos PDR. So let me remind you that you have exactly 5 minutes. So if your time is running out, the time outside from Kun Supita will show up. Okay, please follow and observe the time. Now let's start with our participant from Ghana, Mr. Emmanuel Amankohen Bempa, First Secretary of Ghana High Commission in Nigeria. Please, the floor is yours. Mr. Emmanuel, I think that you need to unmute your microphone. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the conveners of this program. And in Ghana, we recorded our first case of COVID in March of 2020. And following that, we went into lockdown for about 3 weeks. And so far, from that time till now, we've had about 115,000 cases with about 107,000 recoveries and about 974 deaths, unfortunately. Currently, we have about 6,700 active cases. And with regards to vaccines, we're the first country outside of India to receive vaccines from the COVAX initiative. We got about 600,000 vaccines. We have, as of July 14, this is from our Ghana Health Service, we've rolled out 865,000 doses. Sorry, 1.2 million doses, with 865,000 receiving only one dose and half of that receiving both doses. Our land borders are closed, which affects cross-border trade because, you know, West Africa, we do a lot of intra-regional trade. You can only come in through the airport, and as is standard practice all over the world now, you would have to have a PCR test before you can arrive in our country. When you arrive, you also at the airport, there'll be a test on you, an antigen test at the airport to also ascertain your status before you are allowed to proceed. Like I said, with the vaccine supplies, currently most of our vaccines are from AstraZeneca. We received recently about 249,000 doses from the UK government, about 177,000 from the US government for Johnson & Johnson. And we are expecting to receive about 1.2 million from Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, again from the US government, in the coming weeks. And the government is hoping to purchase about 18 million vaccines from Johnson & Johnson in the third quarter. And so negotiations are going on to obtain those vaccines. Our vaccine rates are still low. We have a country of 30 million and currently we've vaccinated about 1.2, so we're still on the lower side. Regarding mitigation measures to help the people, our people, you know, with the advent of COVID. So during the lockdown period, the government instituted a policy of providing meals, 3 square meals to some of the areas that were densely populated, you know, the lower income areas, in particular in the capital and some other parts of the country. There was also they were also given a free utility period for about 6 months. They weren't required to pay utilities, that is water and electricity. Then there are 2 key initiatives that the government rolled out. One is called the CARES program, and that was to provide some sort of stipend to families who had been impacted by the lockdown, and their businesses have also been impacted. With regards to businesses, government also rolled out about $100 million support scheme to support micro and small medium enterprises in the country. And so this is where we are so far with regards to measures to sort of cushion Ghanaian businesses and the Ghanaian people during the advent of COVID. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel. Are there any questions from our fellow participants? Okay. All right. So we move on to our next participant, which is our participant from Indonesia. So you have 3 participants, but I guess that only one will represent your group, right? Okay, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Very good evening. Since this is like a training course, so we are 3 of us will speak in 1 minute each. So we will share our experience on how Indonesia coping with COVID-19. As you know that we are all facing this kind of pandemic since early 2020. And then Indonesia also already have some kind of measures on how to give a solution on reducing or mitigating this kind of pandemic. We already established the National Task Force in March 2020, and also will be developed having all this combined between the health measures and also economic measures. So we will have like a big task force, national task force on how to make a better solution in both health and also economic development. And to support this kind of program, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia also established a kind of a task force group in the ministry on how to promote the promotion on investment so that the recovery of economy can be also achieved. And one thing that it is very important in my country at the moment is the what we call it PPKM, or in English will be like a restriction of the activity of society starting in the 3rd of July, declaring by President Jokowi. And this kind of the emergency PPKM, which is covered Java and Bali, is quite effective at the moment. And then this is already decreasing in several cities in Java, like Jakarta, Bandung, and also Surabaya became for level 4 to become level 3. And part of this kind of emergency, it's being evaluated every week, and then it is become lesson and lesson. Such thing kind of we have to do the medical protocol, and also to have a treatment like testing, tracing, and also treatment. And also some kind of prerequisite when you are traveling or you go to the office, or like educational long distance, and any others. And how to implement this, of course, there are not very smooth one, but there are also some obstacles. That's why I would like to invite my colleague Michael to explain on how we implement such kind of emergency PPKM that is already also implemented to outside Java and Bali. Please.
So as and we have quite a few challenges in our implementation. I'm just going to illustrate using this PowerPoint. This exactly. On the left-hand side, the blue color one shows how much cases we have per million, and on the yellow, the orange side shows the stringency index. That shows how much we implement the policy. Yes, I see the 1 minute. I'm afraid I have to go very fast here. I'm just going to say that the main challenges that we are facing in implementation is, of course, the archipelagic state of Indonesia, right? So it becomes there's a lack in policy when implementing that our protocol. And the second one will be balancing between the economic recovery and the health recovery. But overall, as Mr. Mustajab said, that implementation has gone pretty well, especially with the PPKM that's we are undergoing right now. I guess that's all from me. We open question and answer later on after my colleague speaker. Thank you.
Okay, do we still have a few seconds, I guess? So I'm going to jump in for a very, very brief, I guess. I'm going to take this last few seconds to continue for my colleagues, I guess. Talking about what next for Indonesia in terms of recovery, I think it will take more than a few minutes. So I'm going to take this few seconds to talk about one side of our next policy for the next recovery for economy, especially, is that from the budgetary side. So yeah, during the hit on the economy, we can see that government spending is one of the few sectors that keep our economy afloat. Taking from that lesson, our plan for recovery involves mostly about our government allocating our government budget. Okay, I'll make 1 point about our budgetary plan. So for the next year, our budgetary plan is focusing on the recovery of economy, especially in the health budget. We increased this 22% our budget from 2019, and then it will be, we call it the prioritized spending on a government budget. So it divided into 4 categories, which is health spending, health budget, and then social security budget, education budget, and infrastructure budget. So that's basically the nutshell, which the 4 categories, all of the 4 categories are targeted to tackle the pandemic, the effect of the crisis from the pandemic, and So yeah, that will be, we will still be open for a question and answer if there's any details needed from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Indonesia. Are there any questions or comments? Yeah. Oh, I do have a question. I have not heard about the vaccine policy in your country. Could you give a little bit of details on that? What are the main vaccines and any other types also? And are you in cooperation with any other countries in order to procure the vaccine?
Thank you for this question. Yes, actually, part of the PPKM that we are implemented at the moment as a vaccine is also one of the most important one. So we would like to expect by the end of early next year that the herd community of 70% of the people has been vaccinated. This is not quite easy task though, because then we have a lot, almost more than 265 million people and scattered in several islands. That this is not that easy. So at the moment, for the first time that we do the vaccine, the first being sought is our president using the Sinovac. And then we also have a cooperation bilaterally, and then we are also having to develop this kind of vaccine in Bandung. So this is a part of bilateral cooperation. In this case, and our foreign ministry, my Minister of Foreign Affairs herself, also very active in the international cooperation. And then we are also establishing bilateral, regional, and also international cooperation, multilateral cooperation. So instead of this kind of vaccine that we are all developing, we are at the moment also having got the assistance from other countries such as Moderna, and then also AstraZeneca, and also the other vaccine that we develop internally. But this is still on the stage of what we call it tested in the laboratorium, not at the level of 3, and hopefully that it can be also been implemented for the Indonesian and maybe other people also around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia.
Maybe my colleague would like to add.
No? Yeah. Okay. Shall we move to the next participant for today's sharing session? The participant is from Japan. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everyone in DVIFA, for this opportunity for sharing session. I'm representing the Embassy of Japan. Can you hear?
Miss,
can you hear me?
Yeah, very low. Can you speak louder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Chiyo Kigasawa from the Embassy of Japan in Thailand, and I'm presenting the embassy and also the other colleague Kota participating in this training course. Let me introduce the management of COVID-19 in Japan. January last year, the first infection was confirmed in Japan, and up till now, infection number is about 1.32 million, and the death is 15,000. Though the mortality rate has been staying low in Japan due to its strong health system, it is now in the middle of fifth wave, with the daily new cases reach over 25,000, including 5,000 in Tokyo in the past few weeks. Obviously, the Delta variant has been a game changer. And the government is taking various measures against COVID-19 and currently working on the 3 pillars, namely like 1, securing the medical system, and 2, infection control measures, and 3, vaccination. Due to the spread of the Delta variant, especially Tokyo and the surrounding areas are facing acute strains on medical system. And new measures such as enhancing support for home treatment and increasing recovery accommodation facilities and the use of antibody cocktail is urgently underway to curb the pressure on hospitals. With regard to infection control for Tokyo and some other areas, we have emergency measures are taken under the fourth state of emergency, and people are requested not to go non-essential or non-urgent outings in order to limit the flow of people. And restaurants and bars are to close at 8 p.m. and not to serve alcohol, and shopping malls to limit the flow, to limit crowd size. And of course, we need to wear masks and keep social distancing. In Japan, about half of the population will be finished 2 shots of the vaccination by the end of this month, and hoping to complete all nationals around October and November. And those are Pfizer and Moderna. And currently, the vaccination rollout and the increase of infection cases are chasing each other, and it is seriously a challenging time for medical system in Japan. So little bit of introduction about our international cooperation, and under the principle of leaving no one's health behind, Japan will further enhance its cooperation with international partners towards achieving universal health coverage in the global fight against COVID-19. Based on this idea, immediately after the outbreak, we have utilized bilateral support and support through international organizations, and implemented support of about $3.1 billion, and combined with the additional 800 million pledge for the COVAX facility in this June, the total amount of assistance is going to be $3.9 billion. Japan is providing domestically produced vaccines, and we also carry out last mile support to strengthen the system for delivering the vaccine. Japan is committed to protect the lives of the health of our people and envision the post-pandemic world with a green growth plan, and also committed to further enhance its cooperation with international community in the battle of COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Japan. Are there any comments or questions for our presenter from Japan? Yeah, I tend to agree with you that Delta variant is a game changer, as Thailand also is now at the third wave, of the COVID-19. Okay, if there's no questions or comment, then we move to our next participant from Kosovo. We have Mr. Melin Mahmouti. He will share with us of how the Republic of Kosovo has managed the COVID-19 situation. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello from Kosovo. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. This is Melhin Mahmouti from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Kosovo. I have great pleasure and honor to share with you some informations briefly regarding managing of COVID-19 in Kosovo. So far, according to the data of the Ministry of Health of Kosovo, on 13th of March last year, the first 2 cases were confirmed in the 2 different cases, in 2 different cities. And immediately after it, the government of Kosovo decided to quarantine and to block the entries and exits of these 2 cities. However, after the new cases emerged, the Ministry of Health requested that the government of Kosovo declare a state of public health emergency and some municipalities and communities quarantined. Sorry, my voice is coming?
Yes, very clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. After it, on 24th of March 2020, again, the government of Kosovo has issued decision of stopping the movement of people for 2 weeks. The decision provides stopping the movement of people except emergency cases from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. And in this period, it was like a very strange situation for our people, because we are not so reluctant to have like this kind of emergency. However, in May 2020, the Ministry of Health has announced that Kosovo will enter of eased lockdown restrictions, reopening many services and businesses, coffee bars and restaurants, as well as relaxing restrictions on the freedom of movement of Kosovo citizens. After it, the situation slightly improved and the restrictions started to be more reluctant, with ups and downs in measures and numbers of infected people. Now I'm going to talk about number of infected people in Kosovo. So far, there are more than 130,000 confirmed infected cases, with unfortunately with more than 2,000 death cases. In last week, infected cases are doubled, and the government of Kosovo started with new measures. Some words about vaccination in Kosovo. In March 2021, Kosovo started with vaccination, firstly with campaign of prominent people of Kosovo as Prime Minister and some well-known actresses and actors, singers and so on. Till now, around 25% of Kosovars have been vaccinated minimum with 1 dose of vaccine, and around 20% of total population of Kosovo have fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Mostly citizens of Kosovo are vaccinated with Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine and with AstraZeneca vaccine. Till now, Kosovo received some donation in medical equipment from foreign countries. Also, Kosovo received some contingent of vaccine from COVAX program and from some other countries. However, since last week started some measures of restrictions, like using of masks in closed and open areas, a restriction of gathering of people more than 100 in one place. So with this, I'm finishing. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And also I'm open for any question of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kosovo. Are there any questions from our participants? Right. This is a good opportunity for us to learn. Oh, okay. We have Mr. Eugene, right? Please.
Hi, Mr. Milen.
Mr. Andago, we have difficulty hearing you. Okay. Okay, I guess there's some technical issue there. All right, we'll come back to your question again, Mr. Melning. So we just have to move to our next participant because we are running out of time now. We're behind schedule. So our next participant will be from participant from Lao PGR, Mr. Ekto Wongpakdi, Research Fellow of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Lao PGR. Please.
Thank you. I hope you're still okay to be listening to the last speaker, which is I'm looking forward to share with all of you. So first of all, thank you, the moderator, and allow me to share the screen with you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go on. So in terms of the Laos domestic management of the COVID-19 and the way forward, first of all, I would like to show you a bit about the case and the measurement. The Lao PDR found the first case of COVID-19 on 24th of March last year. And Now we have the big second wave, which is mostly about the migrant back home currently. So all around across the country, many people coming back from the neighbor country, and they are now in the quarantine center. And after that, after we found the first case, the government also established we call the Lao National Task Force Committee for control for COVID-19 prevention and control. From this committee, many measurements coming out. For example, the area lockdown, and we also have the free check and treatment for COVID-19. And the most importantly, it's about the vaccine acquisition and the distribution. As you may see from the screen is that now the Lao PDR, we have already covered about 20%, 28% about the first dose, and the full vaccinated is about 13.8%. Comparing to the population, it's still long way to go, but the government try big efforts to complete the vaccination as soon as possible, because we believe that only vaccination is the best to fight against with the COVID-19. So to all this, we can see that the achievement and the way forward. Why we have the achievement? Because firstly, we have the government on time act to the response, and also we also have the domestic unity or the solidarity. So people have provide good cooperation with the government. So and the most important one is that we also have a very good international cooperation. We also receive the vaccine assistance from both bilateral and multilateral cooperation. And we also have received the medical staff and appearance assistance. And the way forward is that we have to continue to follow the measurements made by the Lao government. And we also looking forward to have the economy recovery production. So we have to rely on country and as well as the ASEAN framework as well. And the last one will be the maintain of the good cooperation with regional and international arenas. So that this is the overall overview of the COVID-19 management in the Lao PDR. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Actor. Are there any questions or comments for him from our participants? Right. Okay, Myanmar, please.
Thank you, Mr. Actor. I'm really thankful for your presentation, and I'm just learning from all of you guys, because the other day will be mine. Therefore, thank you for your presentation. And also, I would like to add the point is that you mentioned that people cooperation contribute a big part for the success of government management for COVID-19. So I totally agree with you. Despite of the international cooperations or other country donation, regardless of that, we do need the cooperation from our own people. They need to follow all the restrictions and rules. That's why I would like to add that point, that I totally agree with you. Every country, they would need the cooperation from their own country. Thank you.
That's excellent.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Andako, are you here with us? Would you like to ask questions to our participant from Kosovo? Okay, all right. Are you here? Okay. If there is no other questions or comments, I would like to call it a day for today's training session, and we will meet again on this coming Thursday at 1 p.m. Thailand's time. The link to enter the training session will be sent to you 30 minutes before the starting time. So in the meantime, please take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon. And goodbye. สวัสดีค่ะ ขอบคุณค่ะ